beautiful, beautiful people. Imagine the world we live in today. So many people are traveling across the globe. Some are migrating from their country for political reasons. Others are migrating for religious reasons, and the majority of migrants today are traveling seeking financial liberation, financial emancipation, seeking for greener pastures. But what would you do if you found yourself in a country where your language was not spoken? This is what we'll be discussing today on Your Journey Matters. My name is Dorcas Glader, and I am a multilingual African living in Ecuador. In the year 2019, due to a xenophobic crisis in South Africa, we were forced to seek for a safer pasture, not necessarily greener pasture, but somewhere safe, somewhere where we could live our lives in peace and tranquility. And the main factor at that time, because we felt pressured, was a country where we could go, where we didn't have to apply for visas and all those long distance, somewhere where we were visa free basically. And one of those countries happened to be Ecuador. And for many of you who don't know, Ecuador is in South America. It's a Spanish speaking country. It's a beautiful place somewhere between the Pacific Ocean, and the middle of the world. So it sits on the equatorial line that divides the globe into south and north. All right. And there it's a lovely place. It's warm. I live in the commercial capital Guayaquil, and so the one of the challenges for us was hello King, welcome. One of the challenges for us was that its official language is Spanish. Um, so we were thinking, um, how are we going to? Hello, Elif, Nathan, welcome, welcome. How are you? Hello, Benjamin, nice to see you. So as I was saying, so we decided to come here, but my husband doesn't speak. We both didn't speak Spanish at the time. But as a child of migrants, my parents are from the Congo, and in Congo, French is the official language. They moved to Nigeria, speaking only French. And so when I was born in Nigeria, I spoke French at home with my parents. And when it was time to go to school, I had to go to an English school because that is the official language in Nigeria. And history has it, or legend has it, that I went to school speaking French, and gradually I started learning English. So at a point in time, I was speaking French and English, and with time, I began to understand the English language. And so, in order of acquisition, English is actually my second language. However, because I was born and raised in an English country, it became the more dominant language because that is the, yay, Benjamin. So it became my principal language. Now at home we spoke French, and with my grandparents who are from the north of Nigeria, we spoke Hausa. So I grew up with those three languages, Spanish, French, Hausa, English, French, Hausa, English. Not until my preteen years when some relatives came to live with us, and we were now exposed to a Congolese language called Lingala. And just like that, we started speaking. And I don't speak that language quite fluently, but I can manipulate myself around when I go to Congo. So when we found out that we were 3 months visa free to live in Ecuador, I thought and I believed that it was time enough to be able to get documented, get our work visas. So I told my husband, I think Ecuador is a good place for us to go to. And so we downloaded, I think, Duolingo, Mesmerize, and I don't remember the other app, but those were the apps we decided that we're going to use to learn Spanish. I must confess that at the time, Duolingo was not what it is today. I don't know what it is today, but I know with my interaction with a lot of people, it seems to be helping a lot of people. At that time, I thought it was helping me, but when I came to Ecuador, I realized that was a complete waste of time. I hadn't acquired the language. I just knew basic words until we came here, and then we became deaf and dumb. When we got to the airport, the greeting was in Spanish, and because we were received by the church, it was, the Christian greeting like blessings or God bless you, just a bendiga, things like that. And we didn't know. And that was when it dawned on me that we had not learned anything. And that's the first lesson that I learned when you are learning a new language, is that if you do not speak the language, like actively make it part of your daily life, you are wasting your time. You can memorize all the grammatical rules, you can memorize the words, you can acquire 1,001 vocabulary, you can listen to videos while you sleep, but until you start reproducing what you have learned, that language is as good as useless. So we came and we didn't conquer, like we say in Nigeria. We had to start learning now because we were living right in the midst of Spaniards or Spanish speakers. And so the people were nice enough to start teaching us. But what I did for myself was that I went to YouTube and mercifully found a Mexican man who taught Spanish online, and he taught us in English. And so I started learning with him. And then when I would go to church, because we're missionaries, I would practice. The funny thing here is that because I already had a background in French, I began to pick up words, or would I say retain the words I was learning in Spanish better and faster, thanks to my knowledge of French language, right? And so that was where I started having life-changing experiences. The number one thing was that I needed to get out of my comfort zone. You come from a culture, or we come from a culture, where you don't necessarily make fun of elderly people to their face, and so it was really intimidating to hear people make fun of your mistakes, but that now increased my self-confidence. Instead of watering it down, to say, you know what, the more they laugh, the more I'm motivated to go back and learn from those mistakes. So I would always, after class, envision a conversation with people after service or in the market, so I'll have those conversations in my head. In fact, when I was ill, maybe say I had the flu and I had to go to the clinic, I would sit down and literally practice a conversation with the doctor, and then I would memorize as much as I could before going to the hospital to see the doctor. If I was going to the market, I would make a list. I would put like tomatoes, onions, pepper, this, and I would look tomate, cebolla, pimiento, ajo, and I'll keep memorizing and reciting until I got to the market, because I know the first thing I'll have to say is cuánto cuesta or como vende, little by little like that. And I had to memorize my numbers, $10, cambio, things like that. When I wanted to take the bus, ¿dónde va el bus? ¿A dónde puedo coger el bus? Coger el bus me lleva a tal lugar, things like that. And so with time, I started learning how to speak and not focus on my image or my accent. And that built my confidence. So I was not afraid to make mistakes. I didn't care how I pronounce the words or my accent. For example, we have the R, the ere, and you have the strong ere. So, for example, you would say carro for a car, but you would say, because the R is at the beginning of the word, you say something like rey to put the stress on the R, which we don't really have in English. Things like that I began to pick up later along the way. But um, the experience for me taught me, one, that people's opinion about me didn't really matter, and so I just had to pursue my goal. Number two was that I could do anything I wanted to do, which was learning lesson. Number three was that I could actually learn a language all by myself. It was the first language I ever learned as an adult, because most people learn languages when they are kids. Like I told you at the beginning, I learned the language as a child. But this was my first time learning it, and I learned it without going to school, without having a teacher. I just went online and followed classes, and then I practiced. So you can teach yourself basically anything that you want to learn. That is the beauty of the age we live in today, of modern technology. Information is right within our reach. You can go through Google. There are websites you can read and practice. I prefer YouTube because I see the teacher, I hear the voice, and therefore I can pick up the pronunciations better. Number three was that thanks to Spanish, I began to remember my French language. And then it began to make sense what the term Romance language mean. And Romance languages are just languages that have their roots in Latin, which the most common ones are French, Portuguese, Spanish, and Italian. And so I began to see the similarities and the relationships in these four languages, which then made me realize that I was very good at learning languages. If I could teach myself Spanish, why can't I teach myself French again? Because remember, I was raised in an English country, and I had lost my command of the English language, because by the time we were teenagers, I was a boarder. I spent the most part of the year in boarding school, so that we didn't speak a lot of French. So English language became the more dominant language in my life. So thanks to Spanish, I began to see the similarities, and I began um, to learn French all over again. Okay, so the next experience was that, because now I was bilingual, and by bilingual I mean I could speak, or when I say trilingual here, because at this point I could speak three international languages. I became a teacher. It put me in a position where I could teach other people. Hello, Lucking Night. I became a teacher because now I could speak Spanish. And so, because of that, I could teach Spanish people or Ecuadorians English language. So, that is another thing. If you're going to be a teacher, you have to learn the person's maternal language before you can teach them the foreign language. So because I speak Spanish, I'm able to explain English, which is more of my native language, in Spanish. Certain principles. For example, when I teach kids frequently asked questions in English, I'm able, because I understand the nuance of the culture, where we say, "How old are you?" In Spanish, they say, "How many years have you?" I can now explain to them that it's not word for word. The translation is not word for word. So it's not something that they just memorize. Of course, as kids, but as an adult, it opens you to the culture, or the broader side of the culture of the language you are learning. So in Spanish and Romance languages, years are counted as possessions. Therefore, you are asked how old or how many years have you, cuántos años tienen, quel âge as-tu in French. In Italian is also the same thing, and so age becomes a possession. Whereas for us in English language, it is more of existence. So we ask, how old are you? Like, how long have you spent on the planet, or in this life? So that was that. And thanks to Spanish, I'm able to now go further and broaden my language acquisition skills. I don't learn haphazardly the foreign languages that I'm learning. I've gone on to start learning my third Romance language, which is Portuguese. And there is a pattern that I'm following, which is really helping me. It has made me to be what I can say multilingual. I'm not yet a polyglot because I don't speak up to 10 languages. I think if you're a polyglot, you should be able to speak up to 7 or 10 languages. But for now, I speak international languages. I think I speak 4 or 5, and other African languages. So yeah, that was what Spanish did for me. It opened the world to me. And for a lot of youngsters that I teach, you don't know what it is for you to say, for example, let me give you the best example. When you were watching a movie, maybe at the cinema or online or Netflix, YouTube, wherever, and you can literally understand when someone speaks in another language. Have you ever felt that joy or that clarity? The sentence makes more sense because you understand the language. It is not always uh, the same with subtitles, because there are certain expressions that cannot be directly changed. And I'll give you one to close this podcast. So here in Ecuador, we say no me paró la bola, no parabola, to mean he didn't pay attention. Literally, no parabola is he didn't stop the ball. And it means, if you play football, if you're an African, it will make a lot of sense to you. So when you're playing football and you kick the ball, a team player is supposed to stop the ball and change the direction of the ball with the principal goal of that ball getting to the net, right? So in Ecuador, Ecuadorians say no parabola or no me paró la bola. He didn't stop the ball for me. Translation, he didn't catch what I said or pay attention enough to what I said to answer me. So literally, he ignored me. Translation, your words or your question or your statement was the bola, or the ball that passed by to the person you were speaking to, who didn't catch it or didn't make an attempt to answer it or whatever. So no parabola, So imagine how that would be translated in a movie, and they'll say pay attention. But when you use slangs like that, you're trying to express an emotional feeling or an emotional reaction. Like, for example, I like it when things go bad here and somebody says caramba. You cannot say caramba in English, but it gives you an idea that it is a regret, a sign of regret. Some people do this caramba, to show oof, in French we say oof, things like that. And that is the beauty of being multilingual. It boosts your self-confidence. It opens up a lot of doors for you. I have come to respect many cultures for the simple fact that I can understand their language, and the way expressions are made in this language makes you think a lot about how the owners of that language reason, and that fosters better communication, that fosters better interpersonal relationships with other people. But for me personally, it has built my confidence. It has given me even the desire to go back to my own root language, which is French, which is what I'm learning now anew, and I'm loving it. And it has done wonders for my relationship with a lot of Ecuadorians. So, guys, that is how Spanish has changed my life. I hope you enjoy it. You enjoyed this show. And if you want to see more videos like this, let me know in the comment section. You can follow me on my other channel, La Autodidacta Africana. All Africana in Ecuador, where I share more of my experiences here in Ecuador. I've been here for over 10 years, so I think you'll find something interesting. Bye bye. I'll see you guys tomorrow. No, not tomorrow. Tomorrow is Tuesday. I'll see you guys sooner than later. Bye.